This is Steve Dupuie for the Bible News Prophecy Program with Dr. Bob Thiel. Dr. Thiel, last time Donald Trump was elected president, the Europeans wound up getting very concerned militarily. Are they concerned now that it is possible he may become president again?
Yes. This week, after Super Tuesday, USA Today ran the following headline: dismay and disbelief. That's what U.S. allies are saying about the chance of another Trump presidency. They're concerned because Trump seems to be ahead in a lot of the polls. They think that Donald Trump is going to work actively against European interests and could turn his back on NATO. And here's something from Louis Lukens, a retired U.S. diplomat. There's a huge level of dismay and disbelief in Europe among our allies. They're saying, are you really going to do this again? Is Trump really going to be the guy you go for again? Then you got France's President Macron cautioned that regardless of who wins the White House in November, Europe should brace for the possibility that long-term U.S. priorities may lie elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And a senior security official in Europe said Trump's recent comments about NATO, as well as his threats to withdrawal from the alliance, were very disturbing and counterproductive. He said if Trump is reelected, that he threatens to upend U.S. and European relations.
Is Europe considering nuclear options because of concerns about the USA and the possible reelection of Donald Trump?
Yes. I saw something from Vox a couple of days ago. Headline: caught between Trump and Putin. Are European countries ready to go nuclear? Thanks to renewed threat from Russia, as well as doubts about America's security umbrella, thanks to the potential return of Donald Trump to the White House next year, the topic of nuclear deterrence is back in a big way and has some European leaders talking openly about whether their countries should acquire deterrence on their own, independent from a suddenly less predictable U.S. Leaders in Poland are proposing hosting NATO nuclear weapons in their soil. Manfred Weber, a senior German politician who leads the European People's Party, the largest group in the European Parliament, recently argued for Europe to develop its own nuclear deterrent. He told Politico, Europe must build deterrence. We must be able to deter and defend ourselves. We all know that when push comes to shove, the nuclear option is the really decisive one.
That position seems suicidal. Is this a relatively new European position?
No, and the article continues that the debate over Euronukes is not new, but recent events have given it greater urgency. So the French have been talking about this since the 90s. What's different now is a couple of things. First, there's a war going on in Europe, and the second thing is Donald Trump. And French President Macron has repeatedly called for Europe to shore up its own defenses and act more strategically independent from the United States. And his office affirmed that he was still open to Europeanizing France's nuclear deterrent. And Poland's new prime minister, Donald Tusk, expressed support for this proposal. And article says, meanwhile, a host of European politicians from across the political spectrum have been tentatively calling for Germany to seek a European nuclear deterrent, separate from the United States. Okay. Here's another item from Politico. As Trump looms, top EU politicians call for a European nuclear deterrent. And again, they want to be ready. It says again, regardless who wins, we want to be able to defend ourselves independently, German leaders said.
So talk is cheap. In your opinion, is there the possibility Europe will have control of nuclear weapons apart from the USA?
Yes, and they also sort of have it now because our weapons are over there, and suppose we have to prove, but the head of NATO is also a European.
So is this a fairly new position of the Church of God?
No. Consider back in the last century, the late Worldwide Church of God pastor general, Herbert W. Armstrong, back in 1979 taught. The indication is the armies of the beast of Revelation 17 entering Jerusalem. We're talking about European power. From that time to Christ's coming is 1290 days. 45 days later, the beast's armies will surround Jerusalem. 30 days later, the Great Tribulation will probably start with a nuclear attack on London and Britain, and possibly the same day or immediately thereafter on the United States and Canadian cities.
So Mr. Armstrong mentioned Revelation 17. Do any other verses in the Bible support the idea of something like a nuclear war?
Oh, yes. Let's go to the Old Testament. Deuteronomy chapter 29, starting in verse 23. From there we read, the whole land is brimstone, salt, and burning. It's not sown, nor does it bear, nor does any grass grow there, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah. And the Lord overthrew it. All the nations would say, why has the Lord done so with this land? What does the heat of this great anger mean? A lot of heat, by the way, associated with nuclear weapons. Then people say, because they've forsaken the covenant with the Lord their God. And so this is part of this is fire, brimstone, and heat. Sounds a lot like a nuclear type of attack. Now, there's other prophets in the Old Testament, for example, Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 9. Pick this up in verse 19. Through the wrath of the Lord of hosts, the land is burned up, and the people shall be as fuel to the fire. Verse 21 says, Manasseh will devour Ephraim, Manasseh together, they'll be against Judah. Now in Ezekiel chapter 6, verse 6, it says, in all your dwelling places, the cities shall be laid waste. And that is what weapons of mass destruction, such as nuclear weapons, do. They burn up cities and they can make them waste. Jesus said in Matthew 24, starting verse 21, there will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake, those will be shortened. Devastation that's coming is consistent with at least a nuclear war, because Jesus can be worse than anything's ever happened. So I hope people believe that. So here we are now at a time when Europe is seriously in the process of proposing spending more money on its military, which it is doing, and also looking to develop its own nuclear arsenal. And back in 2017, I warned in writing of, quote, unintended consequences in, quote, Europe and elsewhere that will occur because of Donald Trump's statements and actions, end quote. So we've seen the increase in European military spending and its serious consideration of acquiring nuclear weapons because Donald Trump may become president, and that's consistent with my warnings.
So is it really possible the USA would be attacked?
You know, some people say, not possible. The United States is the strongest military in the world. But in Revelation chapter 13, it talks about the beast rising up. It says, who is like the beast? Who can make war with him? That's because he was successful doing stuff they didn't expect. In the book of Daniel, chapter 11, verse 39, let me read what this says. Thus he, now this he is the European king of the north, thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with this foreign god, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory. He will cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. Again, that he is the European king of the north, beast power.
So are you suggesting that the USA is really mentioned in the Bible as being the strongest fortresses?
In the 21st century, the strongest fortresses of the powerful military is the United States. So yes.
So that verse is actually saying the USA will be defeated. Is that possible?
Yes. And let's go to the book of Lamentations. I like to read some people, but haven't thought a huge amount about. Lamentations chapter 1. Verse 1, how lonely sits the city that was full of people. How like a widow is she, who was great among the nations. So this isn't talking about a person. So great among the nations. The princes among the provinces have become a slave. Verse 2, she weeps bitterly in the night. Her tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, she has none to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies.
Is Lamentations 1, verses 1 and 2, a second reference to the USA?
Yes, it certainly seems to be, because the United States has been great among the nations. And notice that going to be betrayed by friends. So yes, it is prophesied that the United States is going to be destroyed, whether or not, by the way, Donald Trump wins. But even the prospect of Donald Trump winning is getting the Europeans concerned enough to publicly discuss having their own nuclear weapons. Biblically, we know devastation is coming.
Is there no hope then?
Well, there's good news that the kingdom of God will come and Jesus will return and put a stop to the type of nuclear and other devastation that's going to happen during the Great Tribulation. Again, Jesus said, unless those days would be shortened, no flesh would be saved. But God has a plan. Jesus will return. For example, let's read about that in the book of Matthew. Matthew chapter 24, starting verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened. So this is after the tribulation. The moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. Then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So this is showing us there's no such thing as a pre-trib rapture. See, this is when Jesus is coming back. Now, some of this was also prophesied in Isaiah about Jesus coming back. Isaiah chapter 9, starting in verse 6. And his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice. And from that time forward, even forever, the zeal of the Lord will perform this. So God has a plan. And to go further, let's go to the New Testament. I want to go to Revelation chapter 21 and start with verse 1, Revelation 21. The Apostle John is writing this, and he was told to write down what he sees, and he says, "Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away." Real peace is coming. And that's part of the good news of the kingdom of God. But we have a free booklet that's been translated into over 1,200 languages, at least by this time, that's available at ccog.org. You can go there and look it up, and it's absolutely free to learn more about the good news of what's going to happen. But the reality is, the Great Tribulation is going to come. It's going to include things that are as bad as nuclear destruction, and that's going to come before Jesus returns. However, I will also say that God does have a plan for his Philadelphian Christians, but we don't have time to go over that. But if you want, people can read Revelation chapter 12, verses 14 through 16 that explains that. But again, while there is good news, the reality is that the Great Tribulation is going to be here. Be worse than people think. Yes, Donald Trump presidency is getting the Europeans to think about going nuclear. And yes, devastation is going to be hitting the United States of America.
Thank you, Dr. Thiel. For more interviews with Dr. Thiel, in addition to written as well as audio articles, visit our website at BibleNewsProphecy.net. This is Steve Dupuie for the Bible News Prophecy Program.